Hello and welcome to another episode of the Classical Republican with another reading of Mazzini's writings from A Cosmopolitanism of Nations. Today we're reading we're reviewing two. America as a leading nation in the cause of liberty, and To Our Friends in the United States. So the first one is a letter to Monsieur Daniel Conway, who is a clergyman and abolitionist in the United States of America at the time. And it's a letter, so the background is that Conway had asked Mazzini what his thoughts were on the 15th Amendment, and he's like, hello, it's a slam dunk, 15th Amendment. Oh, and so if just to give you some background, so the three amendments, the constitutional amendments that come out of the Civil War, and this is in 1865, the three that come out of the Civil War are the 13th, which ends slavery, the 14th, which gives citizenship to the former slaves, and then later on it goes on to do a lot of other things. Then the 15th, which gives suffrage, the right to vote, to all of the former slave males over 21. So he's saying, yeah, you gotta give them, if you're gonna give them political rights, you gotta give them, if you're gonna give them citizenship, you have to give them the right to vote. So he says there is no liberty without the vote. And then he talks about this interesting stages of national life. He says there are two stages of national life, and this will come up again in the next reading. He says that the first stage, it's all internal, it's all domestic, it's all about getting your act together internally, internal order, and establishing a constitution. And he's not necessarily talking about document constitution. He's talking, I believe he's referring more, it seems to me, the way I interpret it is that he's talking about the constitution, the classical form of constitution, which what constitutes your society and your state. So all the civil institutions that should be there in order to make it successful. You can't just create top down. And that's what we see in nation building today. You have to have a lot of those institutions already working, or the ability to adapt current institutions into what you want them to be. So he says you got to get that internal order satisfied, and then once you got your act together, go on to stage 2. And that's to fulfill a mission and to perform noble deeds for the aim of humanity. And so this is, if you remember from the Duties of Man, he talks about the aim. The aim is a very important term. He says the U.S. must not fail in helping freed slaves to attain political and moral equality. Okay, so you're gonna have to have laws, but you're gonna have to make sure that they're also organized. Okay, so in this one, he's talking. So in this, America's a leading nation in the cause of liberty. Of course, he's referring to the Civil War and freeing the slaves. He says if you do all this, it'll complete stage 1. And then go on to stage 2. And he outlines what the United States needs to do in stage 2. He says to get the French out of Mexico, because they had invaded Napoleon III and had created the Empire of Mexico. And so this is 1865. They're still there. Of course, as historians, we really don't remember the importance of that. It was, they went in and then they went out, it seems, in recollection, but it was a very important issue, and the French were defying the Monroe Doctrine, but the United States was a little preoccupied with the Civil War, and so they didn't really Lincoln didn't really do much about it. He couldn't. But afterwards, they leave due to American, due to the opposition of the United States. The United States opposed French intervention in Mexico, and eventually that helped contribute to them leaving. So get the French out of Mexico, and then the second part of stage 2 is help your Latin American Republicans. So they need to, they need to establish republics too, and you're going to need to give them some help. And of course, it's not about American intervention into Latin America. It's about providing that moral support, maybe some aid, maybe making sure that maybe opposing the imperial powers when they are trying to stop them, but not doing it for themselves. Okay, so that's a really and one last thing I thought was really interesting I'll go into. I don't want this video to be too long, but he says, he's talking to Conway, and he says, can there be liberty without the vote? He's like, well, why are you asking if we should support the 15th Amendment and give them the right to vote? Isn't political liberty the sanction and guarantee of civil liberty? Isn't the right to vote the seal of human nature that affirms itself via the moral world as the right to work and property is the seal of human nature in the physical world? Or will you deny this and thereby turn your democracy into an incipient aristocracy? Will you decree that color conveys moral inferiority? Now, ignorance is indeed a mark of inferiority, but you did not choose to place intellect as the foundation for electoral rights. Had you done so, you would have met quite a few objections of a different kind, but you could not be accused of betraying your proclaimed principle itself. So he kind of turns it on itself. It says, well, you don't need your voting rights aren't based on the on intellect. Otherwise, you'd have a lot of white people, disenfranchised. So now you can't apply that to the freed slaves. So so he just turns that on his head. He does say that you need to that the Americans need to, the American government needs to provide education as well as the vote. And that was the thing that was being done with the Freedmen's Bureau, and but eventually that went away in the 1877 Compromise. Now, let's just quickly go over the next reading, which is also in 1865, but seems to be a little bit later. It's to our friends in the United States. And he seems to believe that with the passage of the going forth with the 15th Amendment, we've met our stage 1 and we need to go on to stage 2. And he says to be a guiding and instigating force for the good of your country and that of humanity. He said this period has today been completed, meaning stage 1. Your nation's vitality and force have lately been clarified beyond any doubt. Hence, a new period is now beginning for you. Of course, 1865, he did not foresee Jim Crow laws. Wouldn't really see that until the 1870s. It is now time for Republicans. It is now time that Republicans, in turn, abandon their old system of isolation, which has resulted in an unworthy sentiment of inferiority, and form an alliance everywhere. All right. So, he mentions Mexico. Getting the French out of Mexico again and helping other Republicans in Latin America. But he also says that you need to carry out a sacred mission toward Europe. So this is America also helping out Republicans in Europe. And we go back to this older idea of Mazzini's that the United States needs to be involved in this alliance of peoples. And then he goes on to say, you would promote the triumph of right, truth, and justice, and lay the foundation for a new moral, political, and commercial era for your country. The European map must be redrawn. Okay, so we won't see that until President Wilson of the United States, goes after World War I to Versailles and actually redraws the map of Europe. Now, remember before Wilson went to Europe, or went to Versailles, he did go to Genoa, to the tomb of Mazzini, and paid homage to him. And so he is, although Wilson is a very complicated character, he's a white supremacist. He is a more of a classical liberal in some senses than a Republican, but he is, when he goes to Versailles, he does try to fulfill the wish that the United States redraw the map of Europe, and so he does that. Until next time, long live the Republic.